Sharing live stream. Okay, I think it's working. Good, I think we're live. So yeah, welcome everyone. We might just take a few seconds for people to come in and see if that is all working. Give me all a second. It's always a bit fun with Facebook and see if it's working. But yeah, I'm very excited to have our last session here today with Tini and Anthony. And today we're going to talk a little bit about organic soil and fueling plant health and ultimately human well-being and why it's so important when you want to live a healthy lifestyle. So yeah, it has been a bit quiet the last few months in our group here. We've been pretty busy, but yeah, it's very great to have a nice session for the end of the year, and especially great that it's not just Tini, that we have you, Anthony, as well. So yeah, for the ones that don't know me, so my name is 𝗬𝗃. I'm the director at Queen Eco Design and Queen Architecture. And our mission is to make energy efficient and sustainable spaces a staple in the Australian landscape. And yeah, as I mentioned before, when it comes to sustainable lifestyle, there go a lot more things into it than just building healthy homes. You know, we have to keep our bodies healthy and eat healthy food. And I think this is where exactly you come in, Tini and Anthony. So yeah, great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, 𝗬𝗃. It's great
Wonderful.
to be part of this. And yeah, we love what you guys do. And obviously we're on the same wavelength, you know, have a passion for the environment and future generations and yeah, the health of everything, I guess. It all interrelates. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so if what I typically like to do when I start out, you know, I would like to ask you, you know, how do you actually end up where you are today? You know, if you can tell us a bit about your personal story, you know, why is organic soil important for you, you know, a bit of your personal story and how you ended up creating this business.
Yeah, sure. So I guess we're from 𝗬𝗶𝗶, WA. Anthony did a geology degree, specialising in geomorphology, which is the study of rocks. So that's, I guess, where he had his passion for, you know, studying the rocks and the minerals within it. And he ended up getting a 2-week job in Margaret River on a vineyard. And yeah, and that was, and then we never really left. So and that was back in 96, 95.
I fell into the world of soil science in the mid-90s at the viticultural boom that was happening in Margaret River at the time, and was thrust into doing lots of land capability assessments of soil types for horticultural and viticultural use. And then that led to me opening up my own soil testing laboratory, which Tini was my lovely assistant. And from there, I guess it just morphed into, as I learned more and more about the soil, and I was always interested in why, you know, you might have one paddock that would grow better grass than another, and in, you know, looking at that side of things, and then basically realizing it came down to the health of the soil and the biological makeup, and getting the mineral density right in the soil and the mineral balance in the soil. And you know, pretty early days, I began to learn about how much chemicals was being used in growing and basically everything, and led us down the organic path. So really, we both got into eating organic food and growing our own stuff, and one thing led to another, and we've ended up with an organic fertilizer business. But at the same time, I consult to mostly clients that are in this same organic space or wanting to go there. And yeah,
I think a lot of it was an issue too. Anthony couldn't really find, as he was doing the consultancy and the soil testing, he was really struggling to find products that he was happy with, that would give, you know, the results that he was looking for, which I think was the beginning of what I call the tinkering of his world as a mad scientist of, oh, maybe I'll do this here and this here. And so he Anthony loves his research and is an avid reader for all things, you know, soil and anything that's green and that sort of stuff. So I guess you started doing a few blends here and there for vineyards back in what, 2004, 2005, around that time. And then it was really when I fell pregnant with Lochie, our first, who was born in 2005, you know, we were growing veggies and stuff at home because we've always had a passion for the environment. We've always been hikers, you know, surfers, like just outdoorsy people, and love our gardening. And when the GP said, you know, congratulations, you're pregnant, and gave me a massive list of vitamins, it was kind of then when the penny really did drop for me, and I went home to Anthony. I mean, I've got folate and stuff, but I kind of went, what is it that we're eating, or what is it that we're not eating if we need all this stuff to grow a healthy baby? So I told him to put his thinking cap on and come out with some home garden products that would put all the minerals and nutrients back in the food that we eat. And so that was really how, well, we're initially called no frills fertilizers, because, you know, if you garden organically, it can actually be very simple, because you're feeding the soil, and the soil can take, if it's organic, and you're feeding it minerals and nutrients, you can't really overdo it or kill a plant as such. Whereas with chemical fertilizers, you know, they're really, the big difference is that they are based on feeding the plant and really how much nitrogen, how much chemicals they can handle before they topple over if you give it too much. That's why you see that you have, you know, fertilizers like for tomatoes, for citrus, for natives, because if you give a citrus fertilizer to a native, well, you're going to kill it. Whereas with organics, you're feeding the soil, and so when that soil has all that mineral and nutrition in it, it acts like a smorgasbord, and the plants, no matter what's in it, can access what they want as long as it's there. So it's going back to building that biology and that relationship between the two.
Yeah. Completely different approach.
Yes, yeah. But also it's a long-term approach in the sense, like, yes, it may be a little bit difficult to start with, you know, but I think you find that, I mean, the plants and soil is like us, you know, you got to think, if you've got soil and you put a plant in, that plant will take from the soil, right? So if you stop feeding the soil will become depleted, and soon after the plant doesn't have anything to nourish itself on. So it's like us, we need constant food, we need diversity of food, and as long as that food is healthy, in the long run, if we keep feeding ourselves healthily, well, then it's a long-term thing, isn't it? Yeah, because you're building your soil essentially so that plants can have what they want when they require it, I guess.
That's great. So maybe let's go a little bit into the status quo, or what is the actual problem? Because, you know, people think, you know, if I eat lots of fruits and veggies, or even better, you know, if I have my own garden, you know, that's all I need to do in our fertilizers. And, you know, I think there is the common misconception that if I buy a fertilizer somewhere, if I buy something in the store, it's automatically good for me. So can you maybe a little bit elaborate what's, you know, without name and shaming, you know, we don't want to call names, but, you know, what's out there typically, what people buy without knowing what they actually might be doing?
Yeah, well, I guess what we sort of came to know is that, you know, there's certainly quite a bit of sort of smoke and mirrors going on in the aisles of the hardware stores with the fertilizers, and essentially the majority of the products on the shelves, you know, they may even be trying to market them themselves as eco-friendly or organic, whereas they're essentially all basing their effectiveness on usually high soluble nitrogen and phosphorus components, which most certainly give an immediate effect on most plants. And it's the same situation in the broadacre farming of all our cereals. It's a massive nitrogen and phosphorus driven system that, yes, it gets results, but you're basically, the aim of the game is where you're growing protein in one form or another, whether it's a a fruit, a nut, a grain, or an animal, the development of that protein is highly dependent on the nitrogen to get into that plant or animal. Now that produces yield, but it doesn't produce is integrity of those proteins, in that these compounds will still form, but that they're basically, some people refer to them as fuzzy proteins. They're not complete in terms of their mineral content. Things like, there's plenty of statistics out there showing that if you look at the analysis of foods from, say, the 1940s and 50s, of their calcium and magnesium and all their trace element levels are almost, some of them are 70% lower now than they were then. So even though you might have a lettuce or an apple or something that looks really good in the supermarket, if you do the nutritional analysis on it, the quality of that nutrient or mineral is just not there. So so what we do, or we try and do, is it's about getting that density of minerals back into the soil that the plant is going to then take up and be more balanced. And some people say, well, how do you do it without the nitrogen, which is where all these other fertilizers are relying on? But that's the connection is with the biology in the soil, is that the biological production of nitrogen is dependent on healthy bacterial communities, basically, in the soil. And if they're not cycling properly, meaning, by cycling I mean if they're not there in enough numbers, or they're not consuming organic matter and being predated on by other organisms, that nitrogen won't be produced. So you will be reliant on applying a soluble form of it. But if you get that right, and by feeding the soil the right things, the biology is just like us. We need proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, all these other organisms in the soil need exactly the same composition of all of these things. And if they're not there, that's when you have a veggie patch that'll die, or something that won't thrive. So it's about feeding food sources to the biology as you would feed yourself, and you'll get that natural cycling of not only nitrogen, but basically every other mineral.
Yep. No, that's amazing. And someone who works for us, Marion, they bought a little vineyard a few years ago, and typically, everything was sprayed, and they're slowly turning it into organic. But we had our Christmas party there just a couple of weeks ago, and she was just saying, how amazing it is that slowly all the critter and the animals and the insects and everything is coming back. And obviously they have a bit more work to do with the weeds or something around the plants, but they're just saying, how amazing it is how slowly nature gets back.
Yeah, sure. And the soil's very resilient in that if you remove the chemicals, it will repair itself over time. But I guess in an agricultural sense, it's a little bit easier in a garden. But in an agricultural sense, whether you're growing a grapevine or an avocado or whatever, if you don't supply the right nutrients or balance of minerals and stimulants to help the biology, you can fall into a hole and just thinking things will be okay. But this is where, doing what I do, I test soil, probably look at thousands of soil tests every year, and I always say to clients, you test, don't guess. And so that's the fine tuning of it, getting things working. But yeah.
So I guess talking about the diversity of things and stimulating the biology, the biology in the soil, it's like same as our gut microbiome. We need the diversity, we need everything and inputs on a regular basis to keep things cycling.
Oh, that's great. So can you maybe tell us a little bit, what are the fertilizers you offer, in terms of big agriculture, home garden? And then we can maybe go a little bit more detail into that, because obviously we don't probably have any big farmers here. Most people that will listen, are more interested for their own tiny garden at home.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we've obviously got, as Anthony said, for the ag side, he does a lot of the soil testing. We make prescription blends to suit that soil once we've tested. So we understand the test and then make the prescription blends. And then we have our off-the-shelf products for the liquid additions. We have just rebranded from no-frills fertilizers to Soil Dynamics. Soil Dynamics was always just the agronomy side, but we thought we'd bring it all in under one umbrella. And I guess part of, because my passion has always been the gut microbiome and the health side and that sort of thing. And we really want to, educate people in that space how similar they really are. So we've actually gone down the road of, in the home garden side, we've got 5 products. So we've called one Nutrient Rockstar. That was like a rock dust plus, but it is what it says is it's a nutrient rockstar. It's all the minerals and nutrients and everything back into the soil, so that that was actually our first product ever. And so that you have mineral dense food. Most people would know, like, a seaweed tonic, so like 𝗧𝗶𝗶, for example. So ours is called the Happy Gut Tonic, because essentially that is like your gut microbiome, have your green smoothie. It puts in all the trace elements and, helps you helps you grow a strong and healthy plant. Then we've got our fish fertilizer, which we've now called the protein shake, because essentially that builds your muscles. And that's exactly what the fish does in soil. It helps, it's like opening up highways for the plant to really get its food and its proteins through for healthy growth. And then we've also got a potassium humate, which we've called the Jurassic Juice, because it's like the ancient compost, which builds your soil, feeds the microbes, and it also helps with, it's like a, with water holding ability, so like a soil wetter. We also have the new release, which is a Regenerate Elixir. That's like your day spa. Took Anthony about 5 years to get it into liquid formulation or suspension. Wow. Yeah, so, and that is full of calcium, magnesium, potassium. It's basically the synergist to bring everything together. It's like it's a little bit like the Nutrient Rockstar in a bottle, but
yeah, so
really
it's quite a complex product. That's basically, to reiterate on what Tini was saying, we've got a core range of what we call biostimulants, meaning they stimulate the biology, and they're essentially food sources. So the analogy we like to make is that if you ate the same thing every day, you'd get pretty sick of it, or you'd probably get out of balance in terms of your mineral balance. Each one of our products is essentially a food for the soil. So things like the protein shake, which is the fish fertilizer, it's full of protein. It's also got your omega fats in it. The seaweed Happy Gut Tonic is basically like your green smoothie, or giving all your minerals and vitamins. The Jurassic Juice is a little bit like your carbohydrates, so it's providing carbon, which everything needs. So it's essentially, it's about mixing up the additions to the soil. In some products will go together. You can rotate them on a weekly basis or some monthly, and it's really just, there are no rules, even though we've got clear guidelines on the instructions. The idea is to think, you want to change it up a bit depending on the growth stage of the plant, and it really, and the soil basically gets better and better every time you use these things. So it's a little bit often, not all at once. Because
I think the question we do often get asked, well, which product should I get? You know what I mean? If you were to go out, and ideally, I mean, we would always say start with the Nutrient Rockstar, but essentially you build up and you get the entire suite of it, you know you've got that diversity because of those biostimulants, which again is that key element, you know. Because people go, why do you need the fish, or why do you need this or that? It's all about diversity. And I think the more research that comes out, whether it's the soil or your gut microbiome, I think the key that everyone's taking away is diversity is required for optimal vitality and health. Yeah. Oh, and we've got the growing goodness as well. That's a natural NPK. So that really drives growth as well. Yeah.
So if someone wants them to either start gardening or improve their gardening, you know, what are some things how they should start with, or some do's or some don'ts? You know, you already said there needs a bit of a mixture, but you know, it's almost like, so yeah, I have a annoying puppy here that wants attention. I think she wants to go on camera too. So where should you start? You know, if you almost had like a step-by-step guide, you know, for someone, you know, how would you approach it?
Well, if someone's starting from scratch, like with a bare canvas, brand new veggie patch or garden bed, the Nutrient Rockstar is about, we call it a foundation product. So there's literally 17 ingredients in it.
Is that like a powder, or
we deliberately made it? It's very powdery. It's got about 5 different rock mineral dusts in it. It's a little bit like you know, Australia has never been glaciated, meaning we've had ice sheets over the ground for hundreds of millions of years, whereas and so most of our soils are very depleted and very poor in basically every mineral. Whereas if you go to many parts of most of Europe and America, they were glaciated in quite recent history. So, which these ice sheets will grind up fresh rock, which provides mineral-rich soil. So this is effectively doing that in a bucket. So in addition to these rock minerals, it's also fortified with a host of other biostimulants and other trace elements to really provide a balanced foundation product. So that would go in at the start, that you would say you had some soil brought in, or you're just working with the soil that you've got on site. The rates would, depending on where you are with that, you basically, you know, a few handfuls per square meter and dig it into the top couple of 100 mils of the soil to prepare it. And that in itself is, you're ready to go. You would then plant whatever you're growing. That would say you could plant your seedlings. If you're planting, say, a fruit tree, or in a bigger plant in a garden, you might go a bit more heavy-handed in the planting hole. You would then water that product in with initially the seaweed product, the Happy Gut Tonic, which has materials in it that stimulate early root development and install the immunity response in a plant. That would be the initial stage. And then once plants get moving, you then start to rotate through the other food sources. So the second a week or two after planting your plants, you might then go in with the protein shake, which is adding a bit of more complex proteins, which fire up the biology, which then fire up the plant. And then it's basically a case of rotating through those food sources on a weekly or fortnightly basis.
So I think if you were to get started, as you know, to get your garden to a really good start, those 3, so the Nutrient Rockstar, the Happy Gut, and the protein shake, they would be your 3 main, we would call that a starter kit. And then obviously post that you would add the Regenerate and the Jurassic Juice to really get everything happening. Yeah. But yeah, and then it's just simple from there on in. You know, you just keep rotating and adding, and if you see something that's struggling a little bit, you know, give it a little bit more of the Nutrient Rockstar or top it up. But I think what you'll find, and probably what you said earlier, Simone, with the vineyard, you know, the bugs will come back. You'll start to see hairs on all the leaves of your plants, which means they're more resilient to pest and disease. But also I think really when you see the biggest difference is if you use our products, because they're beneficial to and safe on all plants, right? So you can use it on your nose, you can use it in indoor plants, everything. So it makes gardening a lot easier, but also we find the feedback that we've had is after a year of people using the entire program, they just think, oh my God, this is so great. Things aren't dying. I'm not like managing this or managing that, because everything those go, now I just have to do stick to my fertilizer routine. Everything looks good all the time. And that is because that soil has been built up and it's now being able to give.
Yeah, but it is a bit of a process. It's not a quick fix that you do something once and then it's done. But I guess it's the same as with our health, right? You can't just take 2 pills and then think that you're going to be healthy. It's it's a bit of a process.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Let me just have a quick look here at some other questions we did get in. Of course, sorry, I'm just looking at our screen and I'm not ignoring you. So the screen is just refreshing, of course, very slow. Come on. Okay, good. Yes, just some other questions here, if they finally come. So how do you actually ensure your products are organic? And, how do you, verify that, or, what is your process?
Sure. So basically the only way to ensure that your products are organic, and this goes across the board, whether it's a fertilizer, a beauty product or food, look for your certification logos. So they're like 𝗏𝗏 certification, there is ACI or SXC. So they're the 3 Australian regulatory bodies. Without that, unfortunately, Australia the legislation around naming laws are very relaxed around the word organic. So essentially, people can write on the labels organic as long as it's got organic matter in it, or as long as they have like only 10% of an ingredient has been certified in that entire product. So you can see so much organic stuff, but look for your logos to ensure that you're getting what you're paying for. Yeah.
Like you had mentioned before, the words green and eco and sustainable, it's just such a trend word. It's on everything. But you have to dig it a little bit deeper just to make sure there is actually something behind that claim. There was another question about, what products you have to take home and how to use them. But I think you answered quite a bit about that. Or is there anything else you want to add about, the...
I mean, look, we've tried to make it, on our website, we've got a step-by-step guide. So that will give you an easy way of, to look through of how we use it. There's also the quarterly planner on there. So it kind of runs you through, whether you're planting a garden bed, a fruit tree, lawns, whatever. So there's an easy step-by-step guide. But yeah, I think we pretty much ran through how easy it is to use. Yeah.
It's amazing. And then let's talk a little bit about, we spoke a bit about health, but, long-term benefits of going organic. And you said already that within 1 year, you start to see a bit of a difference, but, can you tell us a little bit more about, what happens to your soil and the level of diversity and things like that?
Sure.
I think that you would certainly be seeing results after 1 year. I mean, you will get immediate results within weeks, depending on what baseline you've started at. But it's I guess it's about instilling resilience into the soil and making sure you actually using the products. Many people many people buy products and think that things are going to grow if they leave them in their shed. It's a little bit like, I heard a great line the other day. We were at a seminar, and it's a bit like your refrigerator, thinking you buy food and you think it's going to get better in the fridge. You've actually got to use it.
Yeah, it's the same if you have a gym membership, but you never go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
And I think, like you said, I mean, the year thing I meant more so as in when you walk out to your garden,
Yeah.
everything looks good. But certainly if you use the product straight away, like if you had a plant and you were to put the protein shake on, most people say within 3 days they'll see new shoots or new growth or you know, a deeper colour. So I think they're the things that you would definitely notice. But as far as you'll also see that your soil structure will change, you know, and it will gardening will just long term just become easier. And also I think too with our products, because you, as Anthony said before, you don't have to overthink it. So obviously, yes, we have a quarterly plan, and yes, that's in an ideal world. But look, if you're out of sync or you haven't done 1 week, you can mix some of them together. The key is to do it regularly. It's like us. We can't sit there and not eat for an entire week and think we can go and run a marathon. You know, we need regular food to keep our energy levels up. And yeah.
And I still remember when we bought our first unit in 2010, there was a little garden bed in the middle of the property, and it was always neglected. And I thought, you know, not thinking much about anything. Oh, no, I can put some things in there. And no matter what I tried, everything just died. So, you know, back then I didn't even look into whatever nutrition or anything, but I just thought, how odd is that? You know, really seriously, nothing.
Yeah.
I think in the end, I managed a few succulents that, you know, that kind of stayed alive. But yeah, so I probably should have done a bit more weeding back then. But yeah, let me just see. I have one other question here, if the doggy lets me get to it. It's a bit of a long-winded question from Scott. I won't assume to know what will be shared in the event, as there's plenty of sources online on the topic. However, it would be interesting to see how soil could be used in the built environment, wherever as a built-in garden bed, green roof, or an indoor growing area that may tie in with moisture management in the building envelope. I guess, but in any case, looking forward to it. So
does he mean using
in the building? Yeah, probably garden beds. I guess, you know, when you're probably looking in a city and you don't have proper gardens and just garden beds as such, I would almost imagine. I guess you could, you know, apply the same thing, couldn't you?
If it would be exactly the same thing. We would recommend you just get a good quality, you know, potting mix, preferably organic, and you just use the exact same regime as what you would do in a bigger garden or on a lawn. Or
I think it's also we see this all the time in new building developments where they've you know, built up the site with builder's sand that's a metre deep. It's got nothing in it, and then part of their building package, they get a $5,000 landscaping package, and they throw a lawn down and put a few palms in or something, and it looks okay for about a week. And it all falls over. So yeah, ideally at the start, if you could, you know, put in some of those foundation practices that we talked about before, you would just be way ahead.
Would stop the band-aiding if you get the foundation right to begin with in new builds.
So if anyone listening in has any questions, you know, please write them in the chat. But otherwise, you know, if you watch a recording, you know, Tini is in the group as well, you know, you can just answer, you know, just put in any questions after. But I think you already said you could offer a little discount, you know, to members or to people that watch the live. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so sure. So we've given so if you just, it's just like apply a code. So if you just put in 𝗂𝘂𝗶15 on our website, that will give you a $15 discount on any orders above $50. And I think we've also provided you, like, I've written a little ebook on 5 critical warning signs to ensure you know what to look out for. So you can always request that. It's normally on a subscriber basis, but obviously it's not. And then if you choose to subscribe, you can in the future. And I think we've given you the quarterly planner as well, even though that can still be found on the website as well under the about page. And you just find we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to follow the program and to be, I guess, encouraged to use our products, because I guess, well, you know, our passion, our main focus is always And what keeps us up, you know, or gets us up in the morning when things get hard. It's like we're doing this for the future generations, because if we don't change the way we farm or the way we look at the environment, the future doesn't look too good for them. So yeah, that's what gets us out of bed, doesn't it?
And we were just talking about your very, very early rises, which I found very fascinating. But yeah. There is a big drive. Want to say, yeah, but you know, once the video is done, it will be uploaded to our Facebook group, and then Tini, maybe if you could put in the links and everything, you know, in the comment section that anyone can reply to it. So I think everyone is happy online. I can't see any major questions. Can you think of anything else we might not have talked about, or you know, people should consider, or maybe even downfalls? You know, what are some things that people you see people often do wrong potentially?
Well, probably the only one I mentioned before was not sticking to a good regime of applying products regularly to get the best results.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the key, and I think that is probably one of the biggest downfalls. You know, we often sometimes when we've done expos, like, oh, so do I just apply this once a year? It's like, well, you can't, because the plant's drawing all the time. And you just need to replenish.
It's particularly for a lot of talking mainly say vegetable garden, because a lot of, you know, a lot of people are growing veggies in their backyard, and they're all fairly short crops, you know, from 6 to 16 weeks. And getting the applications right, particularly in the first half of the crop's life, is just key to success in terms of getting something out of it.
Yeah. And I suppose because we've been focusing on the nutritional side, so we're always talking veggie gardens, but like as I mentioned before, I think the beauty is that you can use them on anything and everything. So roses, like natives, you know, lawns, like they'll all benefit. But I think the best part about it is that it'll end up saving you time and money as well in the long run, because you don't have to overthink it. You know, you go, oh, I might just go out and do a bit of gardening, I need to do a bit of fertilizing. You just take the one thing and just happily, without thinking, just put it around, water it in, and you're done. You don't have to say, oh my God, I've got to feed the tomatoes, I have to get the tomato fertilizer, oh my God, I've got to get the citrus fertilizer, I've got to feed the citrus, or I've got to feed the roses, or, you know, and that is really the key when it comes to soil health. It's not as difficult as what people think it is. Yeah.
And like you said, you can't overdo it that easily and then just kill plants because they got a little bit too much of this or a little bit too much of that.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that you'd have to watch out for, which I think is just a mostly known thing in gardening anyway, is you don't want to apply the products like the liquids on hot days, because the sun acts like a magnifying glass, and that's how you can burn plants from above. So you want to do it early morning, water it, hose it off, or ideally you would do the liquid fertilizing in the afternoons, but when it's cooler, and then hose it off, and then it's got all night to kind of, you know, do its job. And yeah.
Yep. We have one last good question from Michelle. For a standard volume build with the very poor quality soil, like you mentioned, is this soil redeemable, you know, with your product, or do you recommend building up soil, for instance, raised garden beds for better quality and compost?
Is she referring to like I was talking about before, like the sand pad type thing?
Yes.
Yeah. All of the above. So nutrient rockstar would be a key, probably the best thing you could do. Getting that material, which has got all this, you know, there's about 70 minerals in it. Yeah, it's like I say, it's this complex, comprehensive blend of basically everything on the periodic table. On the back of the label, I've actually got, I sent the product to a mining lab, and it's got the entire periodic table, written, even 6 parts per million gold. So,
wow.
so that in that situation, if you've got the budget, that would be combining the nutrient rockstar with some organic matter, like some compost. If you mixed all of that together into the existing sand pad, and then mulched on top, would be the best thing you could do, for sure.
would you have an idea then, if you have really such a depleted soil, how, you know, could you then start planting straight away, or would you rather nurture the soil a little bit before you start your garden beds, for instance?
If you did what I just said to do, you could certainly plant straight away. That's yeah, same day.
That's good. That's good. So there is hope.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, wonderful. So I think, yeah, just to summarize, you know, there is hope, you know, no matter how bad your soil is, you can always do something about it. And yeah, you should research more and investigate more rather than just thinking, okay, the plants die anyway, like I did. Now that's wonderful. Thanks so much for your time. And yeah, like we said, you know, if someone watching it after, please put in, you know, any questions below. And Tini, if you could put in whatever the next few days, your contact details, information, in the comment section, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks so much for having us, and hopefully, yeah, it's been helpful or informative for everyone.
Definitely, I learned a lot, which is good. Okay, thanks so much. So gonna finish the live, but just stay on for a second. Bye everyone, and have a Merry Christmas.